In this lesson, we're going to begin to discuss preferences. If you'd like to follow along, go under the File menu to Open, and in the Sample Files folder, select 0204-0205 and just click Open. Before we jump into preferences, let me just mention that all of the stock images in this layout, as well as all other sample layouts, are from www.photospin.com. Most of InDesign's default preferences are absolutely fine. I'll occasionally change a preference to solve a problem. Let me give you an example. Let's say I was creating an ad for a European magazine. Well, if I'm here in the United States, chances are I'm using inches or picas as my preference for units of measure. But in Europe, they're going to be using centimeters. And because of that, all the specifications I get from my ad are going to be in centimeters. So I would temporarily change my preferences to use centimeters. It's going to make it easier to work. Well, what are the most frequently altered preferences? The fastest way to get into preferences is on a Mac, hit Command-K. On a PC, Control-K. You can also get to preferences under the InDesign menu, Preferences on a Mac, or under the Edit menu down the bottom on a PC. Let's start at the very beginning, in General Preferences. One of the things that a lot of users do is they'll get a warning on their screen, and down in the lower left-hand corner of that warning, there's a little checkbox that says Don't Show Again. And so to prevent these annoying warnings from popping up again, they check that checkbox. And what happens is, the next time they're doing something incorrectly that InDesign doesn't like, you don't get the warning and you don't know what you're doing wrong. Well, you can always go into General Preferences and select Reset All Warning Dialogues and just click OK. Now you'll start seeing your warnings again. Let's go to the next section. One of the things that is unchecked by default, let me uncheck it, is Auto Collapse Icon Panels. Let me show you why. I'm going to check it and click OK. I'm going to open my character panel. And I'm going to select some type to change the character formatting. Oh, the character panel closed. It's auto collapsing. Let me open it again. And I'm going to select some other text. And you can see the panel closed again. There's a reason that this is not checked by default. It would take you forever to format your text if the panel keeps closing automatically. Let me go back into my preferences, InDesign menu preferences or Edit menu preferences, and go back to Interface and make sure I uncheck Auto Collapse Icon Panels. Let's go to the next section. I'm going to go to Type. There's a couple of things that are not checked by default. There's a reason. Why don't we first talk about Enable in Layout View under Drag and Drop Text Editing. By default, that's not checked. Drag and drop text editing happens to be a terrific feature. And if it's not checked in Layout View, you won't be able to use it. Let me show you what it does, and you can see whether you want this or not. I'm going to check Enable in Layout View and click OK. And I'm going to scroll down to the next page. If I select my first paragraph in this second column by going to my Type tool and just clicking and dragging across the entire paragraph, if I go over the top of that selection, you can see my icon is changing. I have a pointer along with a little T. As soon as I'm off of that selection, I just go back to my I-beam for selecting type. Well, what is this about? If I can click and drag my paragraph that I have selected to another insert point, you can see I'm getting an insert point there. If I let go, what was my second paragraph in that second column is now the first paragraph. So this is great if you're doing a lot of editing. This also works in tables. If I select some of the text in this particular table and just drag it into another cell, it's moving it into that cell. But that's really just the beginning. I can also do this. If I click on the text in this cell and hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC, you can see now I have two arrows and the little T in my icon. And if I drag into another cell and let go, it duplicated that selected text into that other cell. Let me select this second paragraph in my numbered list, and I'm just going to scroll over a little bit. I have a frame off to the side of my layout, and what would happen if I hold down my mouse and then hold down my Option or Alt key to get those double arrows and drag it into another frame? Well, that's really kind of cool. It actually duplicated that particular paragraph. But you can see because it's in a separate story or frame, it started at 1 again. I could also just select text and just drag it into another frame. So a lot of valuable editing features with drag and drop text, so you may actually want to use it. Let's go to the next section for preferences. I'm going to hit Command K on a Mac, Control K on a PC to get right back into my preferences, and I'm going to go to the type section. And there's a couple of things that by default are not checked. We've already talked about drag and drop text editing. Another thing that is not checked is apply leading to entire paragraphs. Well, shouldn't that really be checked by default? Having the leading in a particular paragraph the same throughout for consistency is just good typography. Well, there is a reason that it is unchecked by default, and it has to do with tables of contents, which are generated automatically by InDesign. And the way it does it is it looks for each and every paragraph with a particular style applied to it. Then it takes all of those paragraphs, all of that text, and applies the style for the table of contents itself. Well, the only way to have unequal leading in a particular paragraph, like for instance a headline, is to not check apply leading to entire paragraphs. So if I wanted to change the leading in a particular paragraph like this, like a headline that may have ascenders and descenders between certain lines, and then no ascenders or descenders between other lines, well, that's not going to visually look correct. But in order to adjust it, I would have to make each and every line in a paragraph that I want to adjust a separate paragraph. So when I create my automatic table of contents, each one of those separate paragraphs is going to be a separate listing in the table of contents. Not a good thing. So there's a good reason why it's not checked by default. In the next lesson, we're going to continue to discuss preferences.